We're about to embark on an amazing journey, or another one. I mean, by this time in life, you've had a few.
I'm a strong believer in karma, so I don't know if my grandfather was able to say thank you to the people that saved him. 100 years is not too long to wait.
I never thought of it in that terms. Now they felt about Dad. Yeah, no, that's marvellous, look.
Last week's Anzac celebrations were particularly poignant this year for the Tamipo and Evans whānau. This is a story about a journey which began 100 years ago, thousands of miles from Aotearoa on a muddy road in France, that ended last week at a small urupa in Waipiro Bay.
You know, we're one small story, or not, maybe not so small, but I think it's a little bit of a much, much bigger story.
And it's a story of one man's dogged determination to say thank you.
My father passed away probably 6 years ago, I guess, and I was helping my mum clean out a garage, and it's full of old boxes and old suitcases and things, and I opened up this old suitcase, and it was full of things that were wrapped in newspaper, and I picked one up and I rattled it. It had broken glass. But I found this.
Mark had found the discharge papers for his grandfather Thomas Charles Evans, a member of the Otago Mounted Rifles, an elite regiment of skilled fighting men. Having only met his grandfather once, the find sparked his curiosity to find out more, much to the delight of his sister Tracy.
Mark didn't have a computer. Mark had a telephone that, well, you could text on it, I think, just. And when you came and started to tell what you had discovered, I couldn't believe how much you knew without a computer. It was remarkable.
Mark was shown how to use a computer at the local library and spent hours scouring books and records for information on his grandfather and the Otago Mounted Rifles. He did pretty well until he hit a roadblock.
I could follow his records for Gallipoli, Egypt, Gallipoli and the Western Front, and right up to the day he transferred, and then it was cut.
Recorded history seemed to have stopped. Mark was frustrated that there were no leads, and just when he was about to give up, his newly found computer skills offered a glimpse of hope.
The photo came off Google.
It was a photo of his grandfather's gravesite, but instead of ending his search, the discovery of the photo raised more questions.
It's just his name and birth date, and that he was a member of the Maori Pioneers.
You see, Mark's grandfather, an elite horseman from Otago, ended up in the Māori Pioneers.
For me, it was a wow. That was a huge honour to be buried with them in their cemetery.
A reshuffle of the New Zealand forces in World War I due to huge casualties in Gallipoli saw the Māori contingent and the Otago Mounted Rifles combined, a move that, according to some reports, caused consternation for many of the mounted riflemen. Mark believes his grandfather asked to go with the Māori contingent because of their well-earned reputation and friendships built in Gallipoli, but his enthusiasm wasn't shared by all. And in the context of the day, that attitude wasn't unusual. In 1915 in Aotearoa, Māori were often still segregated in many places, with entry to bars and swimming pools often refused, rental properties advertised for Europeans only, and in cinemas, Māori had to sit in separate seating. With many historical records of the Otago Mounted Rifles ending after the merge with the Māori Pioneers, Mark had to dig in.
I went around looking, on the net, and I just couldn't quite get it.
His search took him to Wauru, Te Papa, library after library, even penning letters to whomever he thought might provide him with a lead. And then one day, watching Māori television,
there was these World War I soldiers on the screen. It was a book opening for this book here. And the parade was on Gisborne. Then the next morning, but I didn't have time, I couldn't make it up there. So I was down at the bookshop at 9 o'clock, we pulled one out, and wow, what a book! The cover, the size, price was right. And I took it out the back there, and there were the answers.
Mark Davis, on a search for information about his grandfather Thomas Evans, set off a sequence of events that has sealed a relationship that began in the First World War. He found after Gallipoli his grandfather joined the Māori pioneers, but then the trail ran dry, until he got his hands on Monty Suter's book, Whitiki Whiti Whiti E.
I went down the directory, all the references and that, and I found my grandfather's name, his brother's name. Couldn't believe it. I was so excited. The research in that book is just incredible. It must have taken years,
Reading through the book, he found out that his grandfather had been saved from certain death by one of his fellow Māori pioneers.
He was building the roads and things like that. Now, he was up in Passchendaele. The way he got wounded was, so there were out, a half a dozen were out on this road. And in those days, the Germans had this little plane that'll buzz around and see, look at targets, turn his motor off and just jiggle down, and had bombs on the side of his cockpit, and he'd get out, drop a couple of bombs and then fly off. Well, he did that. He let 2 bombs, and one took out my granddad, and there was another chap there that was taken out as well. It was Tawhai Tamipo that saved him.
Tawhai Tamipo was born just out of Waipiro Bay in 1896 and was the eldest child of Tangiahua Komaru and Renata Tamipo. He was educated at the local school, agricultural school and Te Aute College. Tawhai was refused enlistment twice for being underage until his parents finally gave permission after Tawhai wrote to Sir Apirana Ngata pleading him to let him enlist. Tawhai left New Zealand in 1915 as part of the 2nd Company of Māori soldiers on board the troop ship Waitemata.
So the search started for the families. And I thought, well, just the Tawhai's family, well, he did all these things, and it might be nice to meet up with them and share the stories.
If Mark's journey so far had been tough going, his new mission revealed just how determined he could be.
The first place I started was the phone book. There's nothing in there. Then I went down to the library and got the electoral rolls, and there was nothing in there. And so, of course, they're in the Maori rolls for the East Coast. So I got a list of names, I wrote them all down, got all their phone numbers and that, and rang every one of them, and not one answered. Nobody's home. So I started looking around the area, Te Puia Springs.
No one could help Mark at Te Puia Springs, so he rang the former owner, and still nothing, until he found the family Facebook page.
And I put a note on it. Hey there, this is Mark Davis. Your grandfather saved my grandfather in the war type thing. And I thought, there'd be all these emails would be coming back. Yeah, nothing happened. Not for a long time. Then somebody gave me a phone number. So it came in a text, let's try this number. So I got a phone number, and it was Eric's daughter. Eric is the last surviving son of Tawhai.
And they found Maria up at Te Puia. That was the only Tamapo, I think, that they found in the coast. So Maria put them on to Erina. Erina put them on to Johnson's, and bingo, because they lived, just down the road.
Erina sent me an email, I think that's how it was, because there's this chappie, Mark Davies, who reckons his grandfather was saved by Nanny Pop in World War I. He wants to have a talk with you, with the whānau, to say thank you. Shall I give him your number? I thought, hang on a moment. So we had a bit of a corridor and weren't too fussed one way or the other. Then I think about 2 or 3 weeks later, we went back and said, oh, yeah, okay. So we got in touch, made a date for him to come, for us to meet. And I was thinking, oh, yeah, we're going to have a cup of coffee and something like that. And then he says, oh, we'll come out to see you.
I got to imagine it was, hey, say what? And then they did.
It was just the right thing to do, or to have happen. It's unlikely that they had met again once they returned, because Thomas went south and Tamipo went to Waipiro Bay. It's really, really hard to describe, but the whole group kind of almost sat in silence, really, hey? It was just like this amazing thing where if he hadn't done that, our mother's father wouldn't have survived, because he had very severe injuries and he went on to have numerous children.
I remember as they were leaving the first time we met, and he said, if it wasn't for your grandfather, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be here. You know, and that to me had a real impact, just that phrase. And I thought, wow, that's incredible.
On that road 100 years ago, after those 2 bombs dropped, Tāwhai Tamipo had picked up the severely wounded Lieutenant Colonel Charles Evans and carried him to safety.
When he was evacuated, he spent a year in hospital in England trying to get him right. And there was 2 men that went down, and the other one, I know he lost his arm. And as soon as the bombs went off, then the artillery came in as well. And so they had to wait, you know, get into a bit of cover and that big artilleriated and sniped and all the rest of it. Guys, it took them quite some time to actually get back, so they must have, you know, tied up his legs and his body and that. And to get him out, they must have known a bit of first aid, that's for sure.
Tāwhai Tamipo was a meticulous record keeper, and his diary entry of that day is what appeared in Monty Suter's book that sparked Mark's search to find the family.
17th of October 1917. A German plane flew over us. Within a few minutes, we were under shell fire. Lieutenant Evans was severely wounded. They were taken to the nearest dressing station. What Dad did in looking and shifting them away from that area, he probably would have thought, well, anybody would have done the same thing, you know. If you figure out that's where all the guns are, must be aiming and blowing up, and everybody in that vicinity, be a good idea to shift away somewhere else. He never ever talked of any heroic deeds or such. He was more interested in telling us more about his trips around to see different parts of the world. It wasn't very much that he talked about, you know, guns going off above you or all of that sort of thing.
The war affected both men, neither talking much of their exploits.
I'm really aware of our mother's kind of spirit in all of this as well, and she spoke with great love of her father, and he had his trials and tribulations like a lot of the men who came back. Mum hated Anzac Day because he would go and he would march, and she'd say he would be in bed for a week crying afterwards. And I'm sure he wasn't the only one, but it was just something that we sort of boldly go along to. Actually, it was extraordinarily painful for them.
Tāwhai Tamipo returned home and immersed himself in the community. Among many of his achievements, a lifelong member of the Māori Women's Welfare League.
I do know that he stood tall in the community, and because of his reo, because of his knowledge, not just in tikanga, kōrero and history of Māori locally, but also he was a staunch follower of Suapera Ngata. He was a very good speaker. He was recognised by many people in the district, not just Māori, but also Pākehā.
Mark and Tracy say their grandfather was acutely aware of the inequities following the war. Pākehā came back to parcels of land and financial support, whilst Māori were given little to nothing.
There's been lots of talk about that situation where we as Pākehā go and are in this situation. And it's, I think it's a reflection of a whole lot of stuff.
Well, I sort of thought, like, these two met on a battlefield that was not of our making, mō te eme paia, and I sort of have not necessarily positive views about that. Why we went to war to fight for someone who's just ripped us off. So to me, some people might see it as wonderful that we won the war, blah, 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 but we lost a lot as a result of that and many other things before. So coming forward, I think this, with the whānau who have come to say thank you, yeah, it's a positive thing, I think.
And now, after staying in touch, the final leg of the journey in Mark's quest to say thank you is underway.
This was supposed to happen last year, but then lockdown, so we didn't have a dawn parade. Our dawn parades are really supported by our hauwhanga, so we always have a great Anzac Day anyway, but this has just gone and taken it to another level.
Somebody has to go up to Te Puia Hotel and direct them down here, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, they're working merrily along very quietly and doing their tasks.
He'd probably be up there thinking, humbug. No, I think he'd be tickled pink that, that this family have run around. As long as they don't make too much of a fuss about him, because he was very humarie, was the old man.
30 of Mark's family have arrived from around the country to be part of tomorrow's Anzac ceremony.
We've got some kawa mate to take onto the marae, and we're including in that kawa mate Lieutenant Evans.
Huri oge ka kite te te krone. Ka tai mai, ki ngā tama, tokorima, ko tētahi o rātou, ko Thomas Charles Evans.
Probably the most exciting thing I've ever been to, I think. Completion of the goal. I wanted to return him here to be with Tāwhai. And we're nearly there. When that picture goes on the grave tomorrow, yeah, that's job done. Yeah, and the spirit's here. You can feel it moving.
Te tuata te mihi atu ke a koutou. Pea koutou tonu, ara, lauri o rātou, I taka mai I te pakanga te murua tie.
We think of those who did not come back home, who are buried in foreign lands.
We'll go to the flagpole where we'll do the oath. Ka pai. Arama. We usually run along a line and we stay to that line. A lot of our returned servicemen, they were here, but they didn't want to take the limelight off, because of the other families being here, and we're really honoured. So it was just a few that I asked to step up to the front. For his whānau that he left behind to come back and recognise what this man had done for their tipuna, why they're here today. I think that was beautiful and very brave of them.
Sure, everybody. It's actually overwhelming me at the moment. It's the end of 6 years' work. Really hard week. These two are together now. The spirits are aligned, and it's just a wonderful feeling. And I'm speechless.
The fact that the last time they were together in 1917, when our grandfather was picked up and saved, you know, it just, yeah. So, many thanks to... It's amazing to be here and see his headstone.
Yeah.
I think it was done in the manner that suited him. It wasn't a manner of whakahihi. It was done on humility. And that to me is a message for all of us, the mokopunas.
Through his actions, that Nanny Pop has, probably without even thinking about it, well, you don't, what he's done, and action has created a reaction, even though it's about, 100 years later? Awesome, yeah.